We are continuing on with our NHL GM Report Card series. We're almost through all the teams in the Pacific Division. Today we take a look at the Los Angeles Kings. The Kings made one of the bigger trades of the offseason, but have they improved? What will the grade be for the work of GM Rob Blake? We'll discuss the moves and grade his work coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we take a look at the offseason for the Los Angeles Kings, and we grade the work of General Manager Rob Blake. The last 3 years, the Kings have gotten themselves back into being a playoff team, but unfortunately they've taken steps backwards and have been eliminated 3 straight years in round one, all to the Edmonton Oilers, and each year they've been able to do it in quicker fashion. The Kings went out in Game 7, and they lost in Game 6, and then they lost in Game 5. So are the Oilers getting better? Are the Kings getting worse? Is it a bit of both? It's probably a bit of both, to be completely honest, but the Kings are in a situation where they had a pivotal offseason. I honestly think after years of rebuilding and then getting into the playoffs, but not having playoff success, I kind of wonder how much more time this regime is going to have without seeing some more progress first. The Kings find themselves going into the season right now with $1.3 million in cap space. They did make some interesting moves, but I'm not really entirely convinced this team has gotten better. So let's take a look at the trades, their signings, how the team has changed, and we'll grade their work. Like I mentioned, one of the biggest trades of the offseason, they moved on from the contract of Pierre-Luc Dubois, who had signed an 8-year deal with the Kings, had 7 years left. After 1 year, they had seen enough, were able to move him to Washington straight up 1-for-1 for goaltender Darcy Kuemper. Now, Darcy Kuemper also on an unfavorable contract, hasn't played the greatest in Washington, but prior to that, he was a pretty steady goalie. Won the Stanley Cup with the Colorado Avalanche a few years back as well, which led to the big payday in Washington. He kind of lost his net to Charlie Lindgren. Didn't really kind of live up to the hype that the Capitals thought they were getting a Stanley Cup winning goaltender, and it just didn't work out. So obviously, a lot more term and money left for PLD than Kuemper, so they get out of the PLD contract. They definitely needed to address goaltending, so this is how they do it. I'm not really sure what to make of the deal. Like, to be honest, I think long term, if he figures it out, there's more upside in PLD than there is in Darcy Kuemper. Now, I'm not going to give them, drag their grade down per se because they moved on from PLD. I understand why they did it, and the fact that they got out of the contract was great. And like I said, Kuemper's is not really awesome either, but it's a lot shorter term, less money. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, you did improve your overall situation that way. But I mean, Blake and company are the ones who gave that contract to PLD. So they created the problem and then they kind of fixed it, but not perfectly. So, not going to give them a full pass on that by any means, but the PLD experiment did not work. Goaltending though with Kuemper and Riddick should be interesting. They also treated RFA Carl Grundstrom. They didn't have plans to bring him back. They move him on to San Jose. They get depth defenseman Kyle Burrows in return. They picked up Tanner Jeannot from Tampa for a couple of picks, a second and a fourth. I don't mind what they gave up. Obviously, that wasn't anything near what Tampa gave up to Nashville to get him a couple of years back. But, Tanner Jeannot did not live up to the hype at all in Tampa. I understand why he was available. Good on Tampa for moving on from him. For LA to take him on like that, I kind of see where it could fit, but a little bit risky, to say the least. And then, of course, at the draft, they did move back. They had pick 21. They traded it to Montreal, so Montreal could get Michael Hage. Montreal then gave them pick 26, 57, and 198. And I'll give them credit here. They did a great job because with their first rounder from 21 to 26, they still got themselves a good prospect in Liam Greentree, who they obviously really liked. And at pick 57, they got one of the better goalies in the draft and a young, exciting Canadian-born goalie, Carter George. So in all honesty, they got a couple of really good picks there. So I will give them credit from that perspective. The draft trade was good. The Grundstrom trade was fine. It's kind of a wash, to be honest. The Jeannot deal's not terrible. They gave up a couple of picks. Those picks may not amount to anything. We won't know for a while. And then, like I said, PLD for Kuemper. I'm okay with the trade. I don't think anything that was done there is really going to drag down their grade. But did they really make the team better is the question, right? So you move on from Grundstrom, you bring in Jeannot. You get rid of the PLD, you get Kemper. The draft trade is probably the best one of the bunch, although I really like Michael H too. Had they stayed and picked him, that would have been a good selection as well, but they wouldn't have gotten the extra pick that they used to get Carter George. So all in all, it was okay for sure. Signings wise, let's take a look at those. Early on, they got a deal done for David Riddick, 1 year, $1 million. They brought him back. Jacob Mauvrier, 2 years at league minimum. Akil Thomas, 2 years at league minimum. Alex Turcotte signed 3 years at league minimum. Samuel Fagemo, 1 year at league minimum. These are all mostly, a lot of them have two-way components and have bigger AHL salaries as well. Trevor Lewis comes back, 1 year, $800K. Phoenix Copley, 1 year, $825. We've got Tyler Madden, 1 year league minimum. Liam Greentree and Carter George signed their entry-level contracts, of course. Eric Portillo, hopefully the goalie of the future, at least in the short-term future. 3 years at $783. That's pretty good. Jordan Spence, 2 years at $1.5. And then, of course, the big extension internally for the offseason was Quentin Byfield, who signs a 5-year deal at $625. I really like the Byfield extension. I honestly think he's going to outperform that, to be honest. I have no issues with the Byfield deal. All the other contracts are all outside of Jordan Spence, outside under $1 million or less. Most of them are these younger players that are out of their ELCs now that have not lived up to the hype or not gotten enough opportunity or what have you. For a team that was rebuilding, they really didn't see very many top highly rated prospects move into roles. Look at these guys that are still in the minors, 3 and 4 years later. If you're looking at their lineup, a lot of their biggest acquisitions were through trade. I mean, they traded for PLD. They signed Phil Deneau in free agency. They traded for Kevin Fiala. On the back end, they traded for Gavrikov. They brought in Talbot last year as a goalie through free agency. There was just lots of moves that you haven't really seen a whole lot of younger players moving up, taking spots. Trevor Moore was a youngerish player as well. He was acquired through trade. Outside of Alex Laferriere, who seems to have a roster spot kind of locked down at this point, there's not a lot of that going on. Externally, though, they did bring in some interesting pieces, but I'm not really sure it's anything that's going to move the needle. They bring in former Oiler Warren Fogle, 3 years at $3.5. Joel Edmondson comes over, 4 years at $3.85. Jack Stanika and Caleb Jones both signed 1 year deals with the two-way component at league minimum. I have no problem with those. Those are pretty low risk and cheap money, 1 year term. The Joel Edmondson contract is ridiculous. I'm sorry. Joel Edmondson has had a fine career. At one point was definitely, one of the stronger, bigger left shot defensive defensemen in the league. Had a good run with the Blues when they won the Stanley Cup. He definitely played well in Montreal's bubble run to the Stanley Cup final through the North Division. I mean, that was an interesting concept, but their D was a big part of their success, and Edmondson was a part of that for sure. So, he did well there, but really he's been battling so many injuries, and he's just not the same player. I'm sorry. So to give him 4 years after everything he's been through health-wise, and it's too much term and too much money. Warren Fogle, I could make an argument that it's probably a little bit too much there as well. It's not even a horrible contract. It's just, to me, not really what they're missing. Fogle skates well, can play a little bit of special teams PK maybe, but he's very inconsistent. I don't know. So you're looking at a lineup of probably Kopitar, Kempe, and probably Laferriere getting a shot at the top line. You're looking at Kaliev maybe getting another shot at the top six. Byfield and Fiala perhaps. So those are probably going to be your 6 players. Unless they move Trevor Moore. Moore could be more than capable of playing there with Byfield on the right side. So Moore, Deneau, Fogle. You get Jeannot, Turcotte, Thomas. Turcotte and Thomas at this point are expected to be given more of an opportunity to play in the NHL this year, but they're probably going to be in the fourth line. So, what are they going to accomplish with such limited time? On the back end, you're going to have Anderson, Doughty, Gavrikov, and probably Brant Clark, Edmondson and Spence, Kemper and Riddick between the pipes. It's not an inspiring roster compared to what we've seen. As much as Kopitar has been great, another year older, what are we going to see from him this year? So summarizing the addition, subtraction, the in and out here. Coming in, you've got Warren Fogle, Joel Edmondson, Caleb Jones, Jack Stanika, Darcy Kemper, Tanner Jeannot, and Kyle Burrows. some okayness there, but nothing that really moves the needle. Going out, you've got Pierre-Luc Dubois, Carl Grundstrom, Victor Arvidsson, Matt Roy, Blake Lizotte, and Cam Talbot. The players going out are definitely better than the guys coming in. Goaltending did not get better. So, I mean, you can't expect Darcy Kuemper to be, better than what we saw the Kings have last year based on how he's recently played in Washington. I mean, is he, throughout the big body work of his career, is that maybe something we could see? Maybe, but it's risky. I don't know what it's going to take to get it out of him. The D's not as good. You take out Matt Roy, who was a big part of that. Brant Clark, he's going to be a good up-and-comer. I'm glad he's going to get more of an opportunity. But Edmondson going in, defensively, they're going to be weaker. Between Edmondson coming in, Clark getting more of an opportunity, and Roy going out, defensively, they're definitely weakened. There's no doubt about that. But they might have more offense and more puck moving from the back end. That's a possibility there. Secondary scoring is probably going to struggle a little bit as well. I would think guys like Arvidsson, Dubois, Grundstrom, Lizotte would probably give you more offense than what you're going to get out of Tanner Jeannot and Warren Foegele. So I don't think your secondary scoring is as good. Kaliev wanted a trade, didn't happen. I'm not sure how thrilled he's going to be at the camp, what kind of role he's going to get. They just really didn't do anything exciting. Like, if you look at the last couple of years past, we saw the Dubois edition, we saw the Fiala edition. This year they had to undo the Dubois edition and kind of deal with that. That, it was a bad scenario that was created. I'm giving Rob Blake a grade of a C-. I just don't really think they've done anything tremendous here. In my opinion, your decor and your goaltending is not better. It's just the same or worse, probably a little bit weakened in both scenarios. And then up front, I don't know that you have as much secondary scoring. So I think they've taken steps back. I mean, if you look at Edmonton being really strong, Vancouver really came on last year, you got to expect Vegas is going to be pretty strong as well. I mean, Anaheim and San Jose, I expect them to be better, but I don't expect them to be competing for playoffs. Seattle, I don't have a ton of confidence in that they'll be competing for playoffs either. So, I mean, they're right there. They can be in that wild card spot, but depending on what we see out of the Central Division, I just don't see the Kings really being able to make progress and really move the needle here any further ahead. At most, they're a bubble team, and they could be at risk to either not make it, or if they do, to lose in the first round again. So let me know what you think on the offseason for GM Rob Blake and the Los Angeles Kings. Like I said, I'm grading him a C-. I just don't think this team is any better. If anything, I think we can argue that in many aspects, it's at most the same, if not weakened and worse in at least a few aspects as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.